right, welcome to another edition of the Cut Pro Wrestling Podcast. I'm Randy Zellea, and over next to me here, we have a new friend, Mr. David Lee. Thank you, David.
Hey, thank you for having me. Yes, Dave Knows Wrestling over on YouTube, and you could also find me at Dave Knows Things on the Twitter machine.
Yeah, it shows how old we are when we say the Twitter, right?
The Twitter.
The Twitter, the social media side. So, listen, I appreciate you coming on with me. We're sort of in transition. We originally weren't coming out with a new show until the beginning of August, but we had this extra bonus situation happen here, and you were kind enough to sort of join me for Rhett Titus.
Yes. Thank you for having an awesome guest to have. I couldn't turn this opportunity down. So, of course. So, again, thank you for having me.
No problem. Let's let everybody know where they can find you.
All right. So saying you can find me over on the Twitter machine at Dave Knows Things, but more importantly, you can find me over on YouTube at Dave Knows Wrestling. Please subscribe to my channel, as I really do appreciate it. I talk about a lot of things when it comes to professional wrestling, such as the history of certain promotions, as well as diving deep into philosophical wrestling fan questions like, is nostalgia ruining pro wrestling? As well as others are by checking out Dave Knows Wrestling over on YouTube.
I really appreciate that. But instead of listening to us keep going on, everyone knows who I am, Randy Zellea Back Sports page. You know the whole thing. We'll do the whole plugs at the end. Right now, let's Dave and I talk to Rhett Titus. All right, special interview time right here on The Cut. Joined by David Lee. We have Rhett Titus from Ring of Honor. Rhett, thanks for giving us some time, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, guys. It's a pleasure to be here. And, I always like to be chilling in the cut, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. So,
Nice.
So listen, man. I know you're pretty fired up right now. You have the crowds coming back. It's been announced that Ring of Honor is going to be hitting the tour, and you guys are going to be just like some of the other wrestling promotions, getting the fans back in the seats. How excited is that for you guys?
Man, you don't realize how much you miss the fans until they're not there. Their passion and their vocalism, you can really hit that second, third, fourth gear, and that adrenaline rush that you get from those people is like nothing that you can compare that to. So, I mean, they're in the crowd at Best in the World, and it was a pretty rough match for me. I got a few lumps, a few bruises, a few cuts, but that passion and that fire from the fans kept you moving and kept you going.
Well, and also, you and Tracy Williams, part of the foundation. Can you talk about on how this team in your we had Tracy. I'm sorry for bouncing a little bit here, but we had Tracy on a few weeks ago. Can you talk about on how this trio, this foundation came together in your eyes?
I was just kind of really consistent for a long time, and just working hard, and Jonathan Gresham took notice of that, and he was forming the foundation with Jay Lethal, and they recruited Tracy Williams during the Pure tournament, and they were looking for another guy, and instead of reaching outside of Ring of Honor, why not help somebody who was inside of Ring of Honor? And I've been inside of Ring of Honor for a long time. I had my first match in Ring of Honor in 2006, which was my first professional wrestling match ever. So, I've been, very loyal to Ring of Honor, and the foundation was something that meant a lot to me because over the years, Ring of Honor kind of lost its way a few times, and we're trying to restore honor. We're trying to bring the respect, honor, and dignity back to the company, and the code of honor is a big thing to us. That's what the whole company was built upon. And back in the day, if you broke the code of honor, that was some serious heat. That was some very taboo that you didn't do back in the day. And now guys kind of take it for granted. So we're trying to bring that back to the forefront and make it a a huge thing once again. And it's one of those things like me and Tracy have been teaming, and I've had a bunch of different tag partners over the years. He's had a bunch of different tag partners over the years, and I've always been called kind of like a tag team specialist. And tag team wrestling is something I've always kind of prided myself on, and being able to tag team with anybody. And Tracy's kind of the same way. We're both excellent singles wrestlers, but when you put us together, we make a knockdown, drag out tag team. And we've only tag teamed 5 times together, and we're undefeated as a tag team. And we went to win the Ring of Honor World Tag Team Championships on our first attempt, and that's something that not many people can say. And we just fit each other like a glove, whatever. And it's funny because even though we've only tagged with each other very little, we've kind of already learned how each other move and operate around the ring. So we got that cohesion already,
I have to ask, if I may, I have a question. So in your opinion, what do you prefer? 2-man teams or trios teams? What would you say the biggest differences are, and why do you prefer the one that you do?
I guess probably tag team wrestling, just straight up 2-on-2. But don't get me wrong, I love trios matches too. Trios matches are always a good time. I've had my share of trios tag teams as well. Myself, Kenny King, and Austin Aries.
Yep.
Myself, Kenny King, and Caprice Coleman. Myself, Caprice Coleman, Shane Taylor. Now any mixture of the foundation we can throw out there and be a successful trio. But sometimes the third guy, can add a little bit of jumbleness getting in and out of the ring and stuff like that. And sometimes with 3 people, you may think a little bit too hard about trying to come up with combos and that sort of thing. But tag team wrestling is a little bit, easier because there's less minds and less people moving in and out of the ring. So, and there's a lot more historic tag team wrestling to watch. Granted, there were some great 6-man tags like the Freebirds and the Von and stuff like that, but there's not too many like great trios that you can really look back upon and be like, oh man, like these guys were really good together. So I've always just been more of a fan of tag team wrestling, either watching it and competing in it as well.
Were there any tag teams that you've watched in the past that you and Tracy or you and your other partners have been able to take little things from and make it into your own? Were there any tag teams that you grew up watching that you sort of want to emulate a little bit?
I never, I wasn't really thinking about tag team wrestling like as a kid. I always thought, I'd be like, just singles on your own. It wasn't until I got put in a tag team with Kenny King that I really started studying tag team wrestling. And of course, I watched tag teams like the Midnight Express and Arn and Tully and the Rock and Roll Express and the Rockers and those classic tag teams like that. And I really learned a lot about tag team wrestling working under Jim Cornette, because he's one of the great minds of tag team wrestling. As he led the Midnight Express, 2 different versions of the Midnight Express to great. And he had just such an amazing mind for tag team wrestling that I got to learn so much from him, and stuff that I still think about today. Like, oh my gosh, like, I better not do that, because if Jim Cornette sees it, he'll let me have it. But you always gotta think of it in the back of your mind, like, no, don't let Jim Cornette see that, because he's very opinionated. But a lot of the stuff he says is very true, and I've, like I said, I learned a lot from him, and now it's something that I get to teach on to other guys, whether I be tag team with somebody on the indies or wrestling other guys as well.
Now, speaking about learning, because I like that you brought that up. If I'm not mistaken, you were trained by Austin Aries as well, weren't you not?
Yes, sir.
So you also mentioned that you partnered with him. Is it awkward partnering with your mentor? Do you feel extra pressure, or is it one of those things that's easier for you? How do you feel about partnering with your actual mentor versus partnering with other people in the business?
It was definitely like a little bit of extra pressure because that's my trainer. I don't want to make him look bad, and I don't want to make him look down upon me. Like, oh, come on. But it was really phase like 2 of training. Whereas we're training in the dojo at the school, and there's no crowd there. You're just kind of learning all the moves and that sort of thing. But then when you get out in front of the crowd and you start applying all this stuff with your trainer right there, coaching you along the way, like, hey, don't do that, do this, do it right now, and you're listening to them, and you're learning as you go, learning on the fly, learning on the job, right? So it was definitely something that I benefited from greatly because a lot of people talk about Austin Aries, the singles wrestler, but not a lot of people mention of what a great tag team wrestler Austin Aries was as well. Him and Roderick Strong was, probably will go down as one of the greatest Ring of Honor tag teams of all time. So I got to learn a whole new phase of learning on the job training with Austin Aries.
And you mentioned too earlier in the interview that you started training in 2006 with Ring of Honor, but you didn't get to make your TV debut with Ring of Honor until 2008. But you were still working some of the independents. What was that time frame like, being around Ring of Honor but not being on television up until 2008? Did you feel that it was a good opportunity for you to still own your craft and get better before you start making major television debut?
So I started training in 2005, and I had my first match in 2006.
Right.
At the time, Ring of Honor didn't have TV, so it was kind of like broken down like you're like a dark match or you're on the main show. And I made a few sporadic appearances on the main show, but nothing like where I was like featured heavily. And in 2008 was when the Addicted to Love Rhett Titus character really got featured heavily. And I learned a lot though, like doing those dark matches and pre-show matches at Ring of Honor, because I had so many different people watching my matches constantly and getting constant feedback and criticism from guys like Christopher Daniels and Austin Aries and Bryan Danielson, Samoa Joe, and Roderick Strong, and the list just goes on and on of all these different guys who would sit there and watch your match and critique it. And it was up to you if you were able to use that knowledge that they were giving you and apply it to your next match and make it better. And some guys would be able to do that, and some guys would keep constantly making the same mistakes after being told these things. And at a certain point, guys would be like, this guy ain't getting it, and they would kind of give up on you. But I would always try to apply these things to my wrestling and to my matches, and really use the information that I was getting and use it consistently. But also I was doing other indies at the time too, because a lot of these like pre-show dark matches were like 3 minutes, 5 minutes, those sorts of things. And I would start getting booked other places and, be doing a lot of like 15-minute time limit draws and stuff like that. And really like get out there and learn how to work the crowd and, have longer matches, so that when I finally got the opportunity at Ring of Honor to have longer matches, I was more than capable and ready. So the indies play a big part, even to this day for me, because the Ring of Honor taping schedule is usually every other month or so, especially during COVID, like that. It got very scarce as far as like the taping. We would lump a lot of tapings together, and if you're not doing the indies or training, your wind and your timing just isn't going to be there. So I was lucky to be able to wrestle indies still and keep my cardio and in-ring shape going, and also be able to work in front of fans. A lot of the other wrestlers at Ring of Honor were only wrestling at Ring of Honor. So the first time having the fans back was really big to them. I mean, while it was big to me as well, I had a little bit of fans, watching the matches and stuff on the indies for myself. So, but the indies played a big part in getting myself ready for TV and also for just, bigger opportunities.
Great. Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I'm a big fan of always supporting your local indie wrestling federations because I think it's a very big deal and an important part of the industry. I would love to know from you as a professional yourself, though, what would you say is the biggest difference, and which do you prefer?
Both have like their special place. Uh, obviously with like the smaller indie crowds, sometimes it's a little bit more intimate and a little bit more packed. Like last night, I just wrestled in like a Elks Lodge, so, and they were like tightly packed in there, so it was pretty cool, and they were very vocal. And sometimes when you're working a bigger arena or something like that, you lose some of the sound, and it gets lost in the acoustics of the building. So when you're, running a tight building like that, everybody's on top of each other and you really hear everything going on. And also the cool part about doing indies too is, you get to go out and, sell merchandise and that sort of thing and interact with the fans on a more personal level. And, they get to take their photo with you and get stuff signed and all those sorts of things. And it really builds a good connection between the wrestlers and the fans. And they feel more entitled to you, like they're like, hey, like that's my guy, I met him and he was so cool, now I see him on TV and I'm rooting for him,
Right.
So, but, at the same time, when you're wrestling on TV, it's probably going to be seen by a lot more people as well. So even though Ring of Honor hasn't had any fans for their TV tapings so far this year, it's going out to tons and tons of people syndicated around the country on different channels across the country. So hundreds of thousands of people are watching this. So you got to keep that in the back of your mind too. So just because there's no fans there, you don't want to like mail it in or anything because, everybody's going to be watching on TV. So, but it takes an extra little pep talk to yourself to really have to go out there and give it your all when there's no fans in there. So, but I can't lie. I enjoy wrestling the smaller shows and wrestling TV as well because doing the smaller shows too. It reminds you where you came from, and it reminds you of that hunger and that desire and that passion that fueled you for so long to get where you are. So it keeps you humble. You know what I mean? Like it keeps you wanting to perform at your best and stay on TV and stay relevant.
I have to ask this question too because I read in some other interviews that your favorite storyline in Ring of Honor was with Delirious and Hayes. Can you talk back? Can you talk to me about what your memories of working with them, and was it weird from you, doing all the training that you were doing, and then how sort of had to add the character aspect to it?
Well, one thing that I always thought early on in my career was like, man, there's some of the best wrestlers in the world in Ring of Honor right now. And around that time, I was only 2 years into my wrestling career. So I was like, how am I going to stand out with all these people that are so great at wrestling? I'm not as good as them yet. And I was very honest with myself. And I thought that if I came up with a character, because Ring of Honor was kind of short on characters at the time, that I had a better chance of standing out. And that's kind of what happened for me. So I remember one night it was supposed to be it was in like Detroit, and Adam Pearce's flight got canceled, and he wasn't going to be making the show. And they were like, let's give Rhett a shot, and they threw me out there against Silas Young, and we had an awesome match, and I remember coming back to the curtain, and Gabe Sapolsky, who was the booker at the time, was like, that was an awesome, that's how you build a match, and I was like, oh, thanks, and that was like his first time really like kind of like seeing something in me, and then shortly after that was the debut for Ring of Honor at the Hammerstein Ballroom, and up until that point, I was never really used on any of the New York City shows because they would never do any pre-show or dark matches in New York City. So, and I wasn't ever booked because they were usually bigger shows and they weren't using like talent like on the come up like that. So, I had, I was doing my duties, setting up the ring, doing all that stuff, and I went to get lunch, and I had like a big lunch at Chipotle, and like had a beer at Chipotle, and I came back and to like hang out and watch a show, and Gabe was like, "Hey, Rhett, you're on the main show tonight," and I was like, "What?" like like what the hell am I doing? And he's like, I'll get with you at intermission. I'm like, at intermission? Oh my god. So then he kind of smartened me up at intermission, and luckily, I had like a promo ready, because a lot of guys would find out at intermission and be like, oh my gosh, like what am I doing? And it was cool though because that was like my first storyline that I ever got to be a part of, and I was very comfortable because I'd been training with Daisy Hayes and Delirious. Delirious had recently taken over at the ROH dojo, so it was really a good time for me to get out there and kind of make a mark. And what better place than the debut for Hammerstein Ballroom?
Heck yeah.
I was like very lucky and very blessed to do that, and and it just kind of took off from there.
Okay, now this I definitely want to know. Now you said you had a big lunch at Chipotle. Now I covered this over on my YouTube channel, Dave Knows Wrestling, as a documentary with Mike Law, and he mentions how he specifically doesn't eat before a show. One match, he told everyone specifically, don't kick him in the stomach. Somebody kicked him in the stomach. His words were like the cops kicking down a door for a well. Do you have any stories about that? Like, where do you normally eat before matches? Like, what's your personal take on this?
Well, in the past like 2 years, I started intermittent. So basically, that means where you don't eat for like 16 or 18 hours of the day. So a lot of my matches lately, I've been fasting for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. So, but I used to eat a lot before my matches. It never bothered me as long as you're not like I never would eat like McDonald's or something greasy like that that's gonna sit in your stomach and make you feel like crap. I always try to eat healthy and those sorts of things. So, luckily, I don't have any stories like that. But lately I've been fasting a lot before matches though, and it's so nice to finally break that fast after the match. And you're like,
I gotta ask also. You've been in the ring with some unbelievable talent. Such guys like Shelton Benjamin, Charlie Haas, Kevin Steen, and as we mentioned, we can go down the list. Is your goal when you get into the ring? Doesn't matter who it is to try to improve. Every wrestler always says you always want to try and get yourself to the next level. Is there anybody you've gotten to the ring with to this point where you felt like you learned so much that you didn't know going into it?
I mean, one name come straight to mind was when I wrestled Bryan Danielson, and I mean, if you wrestle him and you don't learn anything, you're doing something wrong, right? And another guy that I really learned a lot from was fellow Foundation member Jonathan Gresham. We had a singles match at the end of 2019, and Jonathan Gresham is on a whole nother level than a lot of other wrestlers, and he's one of a kind. So I hope that, even though we're stablemates, that, we get to lock up once again sometime soon.
And also, I have to ask: do you have any memories of the romantic touch? I have to ask that.
Oh, I've got plenty of memories of romantic touch. Some of them I try to hide in the back of my head, but they come rearing out and come to the forefront. But yeah, the romantic touch. It was a very fun character. It was kind of like how I was thinking early on in my love was, how am I going to stand out? Another time when Ring of Honor was kind of short on characters, Romantic Touch came along, and he was a character-based wrestler, and I really enjoyed one of the Romantic Touch's first matches, and it was against Michael Bennett. And it was on like the Valentine's Day episode of Ring of Honor, and Romantic Touch was a little too focused on Maria Kanellis on the outside, and it was
That happens.
Yeah, you can't blame the guy, right?
Nope.
But it was a very fun match, and Ring of Honor just recently released it on its YouTube for Valentine's Day this past year, so it's always good to go back and watch some good old classic Romantic Touch matches.
Now, how much of your your personal life, your personal memories and feelings, your mental state and whatnot, how much of your own personality do you actually put into your characters? Is it a complete fabrication, or do you try to put a lot of yourself in?
They always say like the best characters are yourself turned up to like 100 or whatever, right? So you always kind of try to find something about yourself and tap into that, and try to exploit it a little bit, So, but to be honest, like one of the easiest characters that I ever played, because it was so real to my life, was when I was tag teaming with Will Ferrara as the Dogs, and we were Big Dog and Little Willie, and that whole tag team chemistry was going on years and years and years before it ever made the light of TV. I remember one of the first times I met Will Ferrara. He had helped out on like Ring Crew, and he was kind of like standing like on the fan side of the guardrail before the show, just kind of watching everybody in the ring and taking it all in. And I came up behind him and like flipped him over the guardrail. I'm like, welcome to ROH, new guy. And it always when we would always travel together, and then I'd always just be ribbing them and coming up with some crazy scenario and getting them all worked up and fired up. And it was funny, indie promoter would see the videos that I would make and just me bothering Little Willie, and he was like, hey, I want to book you and Will as a tag team. And I was like, yeah, sure, that'll be fun, And then Carrie Silken happened to be there, and Carrie Silken was like, what the hell, this is what needs to be on TV, and he let the people know at Ring of Honor about how of an entertaining tag team we were. And surely enough, a few months later, Will Ferrara and Rhett Titus were the Dogs on Ring of Honor. So it was a very fun tag team while it lasted.
Before we let you go, I would definitely want to plug your social media. Let's do that, and also plug where your merch. Let's get some merch. And one of the things that we always do here on the Cut is we always want to show support to you as best as we can. So we always make a purchase, and so we have your merch in there because we know that that's a part of your income, and we always want to support the wrestlers.
Well, we appreciate that greatly, and if any of you guys would like to support me as well, Facebook.com/Rhett Titus, on Twitter and Instagram at Rhett Titus ANX, RHETTTITUS ANX, YouTube.com/Rhett Titus. I'm even on TikTok. I don't really know much about it, but TikTok at Rhett Titus. and prowrestlingtees.com/Rhett Titus ANX and shophonor.com. And you can search Rhett Titus for all my t-shirts on there as well.
You have a favorite shirt?
My new shirt that just came out on shophonor.com. It's the foundation t-shirt with my mask on there and all. It's a pretty badass t-shirt. So you guys might want to go check that one out.
Well, I appreciate it. And, Rhett, thanks for giving us some time today. We really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you guys very much. I appreciate you guys having me on here. It's a pleasure. And if you guys would ever want me on again, just let me know.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
You too. All right, so that was Rhett Titus here on The Cut. And, Dave, it was a fun interview. And, again, we appreciate you taking some time. Hopefully this will not be the last time that you're with us. And we'll keep this sort of gravy train rolling. You can, real quick, Dave, you want to let everybody know again where they can find you?
Yeah, you can find me over on YouTube at Dave Knows Wrestling. That's my channel. And please become a member of the Know It All Nation and subscribe. And you can also find me at Dave Knows Things over on Twitter if you so want to check me out there as well.
And if you want to keep following us, go on social media, the Cut PW Podcast on Instagram, Cut Wrestling BSP on Twitter, and Facebook, the Cut Pro Wrestling Podcast.com. We have a link tree, and we are on all podcast platforms, including YouTube, by the way. And we are all over the place. Like I said, Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, you name it, we're there. Keep giving us a follow. Thank you for all your support. This is a special bonus show. We will be back August 2nd for the second season of the Cut Pro Wrestling Podcast.